Titles are valuable things, but real power is what matters. The room went silent. No music, no laughter, not even the soft clink of glasses, just silence. Because a man had just said that, directly to a prince, not behind his back, not in private, right in front of him. It happened inside St. James's Palace, one of the oldest royal buildings in Britain, a place where people measure every word. And yet that night, Tom Parker Bowles stood in front of Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, and challenged him, not loudly, not aggressively, but carefully, like he wanted certain people to hear. Let's talk about what really happened. Because insiders say this wasn't just a rude moment, it was a signal. That evening wasn't casual. It was one of those quiet royal gatherings, the kind where powerful names show up without cameras. Old money, political influence, royal connections, everyone watching everything. And then Tom stepped forward, picked his moment, picked his audience, and delivered that line. People froze, not because of the words alone, but because of what they meant. Someone with so little authority. That part stayed in the air, heavy, uncomfortable. Because what many people don't know is this. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, had recently been given real responsibility. Not just a title. Control. By King Charles III himself. He was overseeing royal estates, places like Sandringham House and Windsor, private properties, deeply protected, full of history, and Edward took that seriously. Very seriously. So when Tom said those words, it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a challenge. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because according to people in that room, Tom wasn't just speaking casually. He was hinting at something. Something about those estates. Something about access. Something about rules. Being ignored. Edward didn't react. Not publicly. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue, didn't even interrupt. He just stared, cold, still, controlled. And that silence, it said more than any argument could. But there's more to this story, because later that same night, people started whispering, quiet conversations, side glances, careful words, and what they said changed everything. They told Edward something he wasn't expecting. Something bigger than a rude comment. They said Tom had been using royal property, not once, not casually, repeatedly, private events, closed doors, no official record. And here's the part that made it worse. They claimed he wasn't doing it alone. To understand why this mattered, you need to understand the people involved. Start with Queen Camilla. Her journey into the royal family wasn't simple. It was long. Complicated, public. For years, she stayed in the background, careful, strategic, and when she finally became queen, she knew how the system worked. Maybe better than most. Then there's her son, Tom Parker Bowles. Not a royal, but always close to the royal world. Writers and journalists who followed him say he built his career step by step. Food writing, media, connections. But those connections mattered. A lot. Because access to royal spaces, that's rare and valuable. Now look at Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh. For years, he stayed out of the spotlight, not loud, not controversial, but steady, reliable. And recently, more important, when King Charles III expanded his responsibilities, it changed things. Edward wasn't just a background figure anymore. He had authority, real authority, and insiders say he treated it like a duty, not a privilege. That's where the tension began. Because if someone was using royal property without permission, that responsibility fell on him. And if he didn't act, it would reflect on him. Then came the pattern. Reports started lining up, private events, unusual activity, staff being asked to prepare things quietly, nothing official, nothing announced, but enough to raise questions. And then came something even more interesting: a cookbook. In 2024, Tom released a book tied to royal recipes, built partly on royal connections. Public reaction was mixed. Some liked it, some questioned it. Because it raised one simple thought: where does access end and privilege begin? But those concerns stayed quiet, at least publicly. Inside palace circles? Different story. People noticed. People talked. But nobody acted. Until that night. Because that confrontation at St. James's Palace wasn't random. It was building for a long time. And then came the moment that changed everything. On this particular occasion, Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, made a decision. He didn't argue. He didn't respond publicly. He investigated. Quietly. Early the next day, he went to Sandringham House. No announcement. No attention. Just a routine visit. On paper. But what he found there didn't feel routine. At first, it was small things. Marks on the floor. Deep scratches. Not wear and tear. Movement. Heavy movement. Then the smell. Not the usual scent of old wood and polish. Something else. Cooking oils. Spices. Lingering. As if something had happened there. Repeatedly. Edward kept going. Room by room. And then he checked the records. Maintenance logs. Work orders. Hidden between normal entries. Patterns. Private event at senior. Request. Again, and again, and again. No names, no details, just that phrase, for 6 months. That's when things started to feel serious. Then came the confirmation. A staff member, long-serving, careful with words, quietly mentioned that Tom had hosted small gatherings. Nothing official, nothing recorded, but enough to connect the dots. Edward didn't react outwardly, but insiders say something shifted in that moment. Because this wasn't just misuse. It was repeated access, and possibly approval. That's when he found the document. A catering order, detailed, planned, signed, and below it, a single line. Property released for use by family directive. 5 words. But those 5 words changed everything, because they didn't name anyone. But they implied authority, real authority, and that raised the biggest question of all: who approved it? Accounts from insiders suggest the situation quickly escalated. The findings, the documents, the patterns, all pointed in one direction: not just individual action, but something broader, something internal. When Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, presented everything to King Charles III, the reaction was quiet. Measured, but serious. Because this wasn't just about property. It was about trust and control. Reports suggest actions were taken quickly. Access was restricted. Oversight increased. Rules tightened. Behind closed doors, because that's how the palace handles things. Quietly. Public reaction? Mixed. Some dismissed it as internal tension. Others saw it as something bigger. A shift, because for the first time in a long time, the system had been tested from the inside, and it responded firmly. The aftermath is still not fully visible. But one thing stands out. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, didn't ignore it. He acted. And that decision? It changed something. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Because these stories provide insight into something deeper. Power isn't just about titles. It's about who enforces the rules and who is willing to speak when others stay silent.